In this part, I will be looking for the connection between the kindling of fire, the churning of milk, and the swastika. And I look at similarities between old European and Vedic creation myth. Hello YouTube. In the first part of this episode, we looked at some of the sources that form the base of our views of Indian culture, and it may be clear that in general the accounts are skewed when it concerns cultures beyond the Western European or Judeo-Christianized world. Thanks to modern science, however, and a larger appreciation of the work of local scholars and researchers, we are confronted with a new reality. A reality that unfortunately does not trickle down into our education system yet. We looked a bit at the connections between the mythological figure of the Lightbringer and ancient tradition of the art of fire making in India. I would like to go a little bit further in this, connecting different places in the world, and by doing so I hope to give more substance to the notion that the widespread appearance of the swastika cannot simply be explained with the argument of mere coincidence or some unconnected expression of the same archaic symbolism of the subconscious. And in other words, that there is more than one reason to believe that the ancients had long distant contacts. In ancient India or Vedic India, the art of fire making is connected to the swastika through deified fire. The pramanta or fire stick is used together with the arani, a mobile piece of wood in which the stick is rubbed until the friction causes heat, and thus fire comes into existence. Third element is the rope by which this friction is caused. It reminds of the custom that I mentioned in the episode on Vasta, by which the ritual fire of the temple was relit on the first day of the year in March. This fire had to be performed by means of friction. I also pointed out that the wood used for this had to be oak wood. Oak was considered the holy tree of Jupiter, the Roman version of Zeus with the thunderbolts. There is another connection I would like to point out, namely to an old Russian tradition from the region of Novgorod, which is in the west of Russia, very close to the Baltic Sea. I mentioned the importance of the Amber Road already in my very first episode, although the importance of this trade route can only be proven as far back as the beginning of the second millennium through Baltic amber beads, etc., found in Egypt, the Levant, and the Aegean Sea. I propose this road has been well traveled hundreds, if not thousands, of years before this trade was established for whatever reasons, like migration due to climate change and consequential catastrophe is a factor left out of consideration too often, or so it seems to me. There is enough evidence of the faring skills of the early Celts who inhabited Central and Eastern Europe, so movement over large distance via the major rivers is to be expected. And if goods are transported over large distance, so would be people with their ideas and dogmas. I probably stated my opinion before on how historians seem to avoid talking too much or on the big potential Neolithic or Paleolithic man had um, available, like to cross enormous distance in a short time. There was a huge potential. There were rivers, there were horses or reindeer to be tamed. I see no reason why they would not have turned this potential into use. Slavic religion also has several deities connected to fire, but the one called Ognebog is generally called the equivalent of Agni, although he is equated with Svarog, the supreme sky and solar deity, and sometimes with the Simarl, a fiery griffin-like creature, and others. In Slavic myth, this Simargl is tied to the pole star with a chain, thus representing the Ursa Minor constellation. And finally, the name Simargl connects to the Persian Simurg, the Kurdish Simir, and the Armenian Simarak or peacock, all of them connecting to our phoenix from the last episode. So, what does this tell us about the meaning of the swastika? I think at this point that most ancient interpretations are more than just the sun performing her daily route in our sky, more than kindling fire as well. It hints towards a fire more ancient and a deity more supreme. I was constantly reminded, in fact, during research of the ivory bird images from Mezine in the first episode and supernova that occurred in the constellation Cygnus that was highly visible during millennia, or at least at the center of the northern skies, of which we can observe the remnants to this day. This may very well have enlightened the belief of an omnipotent force hidden behind the turning firmament, manifesting as a visible light in the center of the night sky, and maybe the birds on the stick, as used in shamanic ritual by Finno-Ugric or Turkic nomads, represent the firebird, the bringer of God's message, rather than the geese announcing change of seasons. But I am only guessing, and there is little proof for conclusive statements either way, in my opinion. So, so is the swastika the symbol of the bringer of fire, or is there more to it? The pramanta used to create sacred fire by friction is not a tool only used for fire kindling. When we look at the root of the word manta, we get the following explanation: to stir or whirl around, to rub, to crush, to overturn and destroy, to produce fire by rapidly whirling around or rotating two dry sticks, to churn. So they are all talking about some sort of friction. Friction that can be used for fire kindling, drilling, as well as grinding, and for making butter and cream. In traditional communities, this method of churning is still in use today. The Samudra Mantana, or churning of the ocean of milk, an epos repeated in the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, and the Vishnu Purana, the most important Vedic scriptures dating as far back as the 4th millennium. They describe how gods or devas and demons or asuras use a mountain as a giant pramanta, assisted by Visaku, king of snakes, who functions as a rope in order to get their hands on Amrita, or the elixir of life. So they churn the ocean of milk, and in doing so, they produce a number of gems known as ratnas, like goddesses and nymphs, sun and moon, and Soma, god of plants, etc., all emerge from the churned ocean. This Soma is sometimes mentioned together with Agni, the fire god, as being the two primal deities, sun and moon. Um, Sometimes, though, Soma is defined as the moist manifestation of Agni, like fire is present in all things, even water. This refers to the omnipotence that some of the ancients recognized. At least there are several interpretations, and some are very interesting to take a deeper look at, but not here and now. There are so much deviations in the verses of the Vedic scripture. It would take me a lifetime of study, I think, all to 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 um, to learn all the variations and avatars and the divine pecking order, as deities seem to have an expiring date, or at least undergo serious makeovers. I don't want to go into that too much now. Maybe I will make an episode on astronomical aspects of Vedic and Hindu tradition in the future. In the verses of the gods and the demons, the act of churning becomes the generator of the elements of the universe and the organizer of its structure. It is a metaphor for the inevitable process of transformation from chaos into order. Out of the ocean of milk, among all creatures, the mother of all cows, Kamadhenu, emerges as well. Milk, butter, and cheese are regarded as food for the gods in Hinduism. This probably goes back to the legend in which Indra is stuck inside an anthill, and Kamadhenu, mother of all the cows, saves him by feeding him her milk daily. She can be related to the cornucopia, or the she-goat who feeds the abandoned baby Zeus and is the provider of plenty. This is where we find another link between the Veda and the Edda, as the creation myth of the Scandinavians, or the Norse creation myth, tells us about Idumla feeding Ymir, the first man, with 4 streams of milk from her udder. I can mention another connection found in the Slavic mythology, where the heavenly cow named Zemun also takes part in the creation myth. And no doubt there are more examples to be found if you look for it. The story here on churning milk may seem of no interest or connection with the swastika, but that's not really true. As we have seen so far in this episode, the symbol is connected with friction. It is connected with the potential of creation under the condition that different forces complement each other in an action. In other words, it expresses in essence this interaction or cooperation as a necessity for any consequent creation. This work here, called Les mots et les actes baratés, allumer le feu, question de texte et d'ensemble technique, or in English, words and acts, churn, light the fire, at issue text and technological complexes, was in particular useful for me, as it goes into depth on the issue of both fire making and milk churning in the Vedic tradition, and shows the reader more specifically how techniques rest upon a knowledge of principles, and how linguistics can help to uncover these intrinsic connections. She shows us that these principles of independent and seemingly opposite forces complement each other, and can encompass a large range of not only techniques used in the crafts, but that they are fundamental to all creation. In the art of fire kindling, the pramanta is kept by the high priest. The Arani is with his wife. This seems to be this can be seen as an expression of the male and the female forces coming together the day of the ritual. Just like the gods and the demons in the story of the churning of the ocean of milk, they move together, and although different in action or non-action, they are united in their creation as of holy fire. This story here on churning milk may seem of no interest or connection with the swastika, but that's not really true. As we have seen as we have seen so far in this episode, the symbol is connected with friction. It is connected to the potential of creation under the condition that different forces complement each other in an action. In other words, it expresses, in essence, this interaction or cooperation as a necessity for any consequent creation. That is an explanation given for the swastika here. Swastika are a common symbol in India then, used during wedding ceremonies, and in Western Russia also, until recently an old tradition dictated a newlywed couple to cross a burning swastika together before entering their new home, and thus call happiness, fertility, and prosperity over their future. So, in conclusion, from the perception of moderners, we are no longer in the art of into the art of making fire or churning, and the feeling with the principle expressed by the pramanta may be difficult to grasp. The right context is missing, so we no longer kindle fire or churn milk. So that context is gone. If there is any connection left, it is the underlying idea of the sexual act that results in conception. But that does not necessarily lead us to the recognition of that universal principle of transformation from chaos into order through the unification of independent factors. For although independent and even opposed, as in the epic churning of the ocean of milk, gods and demons work together to bring about creation. It is this coming together that breaks down inertia and creates a movement that leads to progress and prosperity. We find the swastika as a symbol for that dynamic of living in the making. It is not a vibration transmitting energy. The vibration, and with that in causio the transmission, is the energy. Agni is not the bird of the gods. He is three in one. He is the gods, he is the messenger, and he is the message. And talking about messages, that's about what the swastika symbol is giving us here in this situation. And that is that for this episode. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye, YouTube. See you next time.